Alright. Hey Jose, this is to help you out. Hopefully this will be useful in learning Python, or at least learning programming a little bit. So what I want you to do actually is, I gave you some instructions before and they may have been useful or not. It sounds like you got through them a little bit and you got to a video, at least number 4 or something like that. Here we're just going to go through the Windows subsystem for Linux. I frankly think this is easier. Usually Linux stuff that I've dealt with is more organized than Python on Windows. You could probably do the same stuff with Python on Windows. People do. But gosh, I just have a lot easier time using Linux stuff, especially through the terminal. You want to get used to the terminal because it's just a lot more efficient for a lot of the stuff. And you'll see it a lot more often if you continue and do physics for computation, things like that. A lot more people use Linux just because it's really easy to, it's easier to set up models and stuff. So first off, you just want to go to this website here, ubuntu.com/WSL. You may not be able to see that in the video, but I'll post it in the description. But basically, just kind of follow the instructions on this site. It's pretty simple. You just enable WSL on Windows 10 by going to the PowerShell right here and then enabling it with this command. So you just copy, paste into the PowerShell and then restart your computer. Next thing is you go to the Microsoft Store and you install Ubuntu. It's pretty easy to do. It does most of the work for you. And you can run Ubuntu. So I can go down here, and I've already installed it, so I have a little icon here that pulls up the screen. You can't see the font very well, but what I'm going to show you next is something that's probably a little easier and a little more customizable and a little more fun to play with Ubuntu than through the default little prompt it gives you. So do that. When you pull it up for the first time, you'll install a few things, and basically you'll set up your username and stuff like that. Just keep it simple. Don't really make things crazy. And that's kind of all the instructions. So just follow the instructions, pretty simple. And then what you want to do next is actually install the Windows terminal. And you can go to Microsoft Store or just go to this website. Again, I'll post it in the bottom. I'll post it in the description. And just get it. I have it already, so it's right down here. And it's just a kind of easier way to access and use the terminal, because again, you kind of want to get used to the terminal. So see here, you can see the font a little easier, it's a little bigger. It's going to be easier to use. So I'm going to go ahead and move this window and we'll get started. So we'll go ahead and move over. So the cd command changes directory, change directory command. So I'm going to change directory to the desktop because I was in my user directory and I want to get out of that. And so what I'm going to do actually is make in my desktop directory, which is the same desktop you see here actually, a new folder that I'm going to name Ubuntu. So make directory is the command followed by the name of the directory that you want to name it. Enter, and boom, you see that over here you have a little folder here that is named Ubuntu. Again, hard to see the font, but that's what that is. Gonna move into that directory or folder, it's called, and now I'm in Ubuntu. And what I'm going to do next is install Python. It's actually pretty easy. Sudo apt get install Python. In this case, you want Python 3. That's the newest Python right now. And install it. I've already installed it, so I'm all set to go there. You can see that Python 3 is already the newest version. Python 2 is set to be installed because I've already installed it. And so you saw there with sudo. I had to enter my password. It's just you'll do that when you install the Ubuntu subsystem. So Nothing's here right now, but what I also want to do is install pip. Now pip is the package manager for Python, and that, I believe, is the name for it. So here we go. Okay, we'll install pip. I'm actually going to go full screen with my terminal, and basically I want to say yes. Unable to fix. So here's what you got to do sometimes is actually do to apt-get update, and what that does is it updates the links to repositories so that you get the most up-to-date packages. Otherwise you'll get the fail to fetch at blank because it doesn't find it. Okay, so now we've done that. Real quickly I'm going to run the upgrade command because that just quickly updates everything. Enter yes, go through, update everything. Should be pretty quick. I don't have a lot of things installed in my Windows subsystem because I don't really use it a whole lot. So there you go, it's already at 13, 14, 15%. We'll just kind of sit back and let that roll. Ah, here we go. Finally. Let's go ahead. Change that up. Turn that down. Okay, so let's get everything upgraded. Let's try again to install pip. Yes. Okay. Now we're getting all the information, packages. Again, we wait. Actually, one thing I forgot to mention, if I leave out of here. So when you first enter Windows Terminal, you may not have it it may not open to Ubuntu immediately, and it'll probably open to a command prompt or something like that. The way to fix that is you go to Settings. Well, first off, here's where you can access the different profiles, as they're called, to access different subsystems. So Windows PowerShell, command prompt, Ubuntu, Azure Cloud Shell. Don't use that at all. Not sure what's there. But you go to Settings, and then here you have Default Profile. Okay. So you have Default Profile right here in the middle. Okay. And so you can see I have this number here between the brackets, and that's because that's the same number as this number here, which is a profile. This is GUID. Same profile as the ID for my Ubuntu profile, which is here. See, and it's the source here. This should already be entered. See, I've increased my font size so it's easier to see in the recording. But this should already be here, and all you gotta do is copy this number and paste it up in default profile. And now every time you enter into Windows Terminal, this should come up. This should be Ubuntu coming up. So I forgot to mention that beforehand. Here you go. This will make it easier. Okay, so it finished downloading, and now we have pip. And we're not going to use it immediately, but pip will be useful for when we want to use other packages, which is really one of the big strengths of most programming, is having different libraries accessible to you, where a lot of other people have done a lot of work so you don't have to. A big example for Python is NumPy. Again, we won't use it immediately, but first, starting out, we're just going to have fun with a simple program. And so for me, I'm used to Vim. I like working in terminal. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to install my favorite Vim, which is NeoVim. And this should be hopefully the right one. Yes, it is. Okay. And so Vim is just a text editor essentially. It's a modal text editor, So when it comes up, you'll see what happens, what I mean. But basically, it's a almost entirely, or it's designed to be essentially an entirely keyboard-driven text editor. So you don't have to move your fingers from the keyboard. You don't have to use your mouse to use it. If you don't like using it and it's uncomfortable, it takes time because basically you have to go into different modes to edit the document and out of it. For example, I'm just going to do neovim, should be right, neovim test or hello.py. Okay, so no, it's not neovim, it's nvim. There we go. So now I'm in neovim. And in order to enter characters, I have to type I, so it's now to insert, and I can now type. So I can do what I want to do here. So this is our first Python document. You know what? Actually, I'm not going to enter anything. I'm going to write close. And now, if we go to the Ubuntu system, you can see that there's a hello.py in here. And what we do actually is I'm going to open this. Oh, come on. Open it with a text editor. So let's use Notepad. Simple enough. Let's not do that. So here's empty hello.py notepad, or the text file. It's a Python script file actually, and what it is basically when you work in programming languages, you write a script file, and then you run that script file to execute it, or you compile it if it's C. So Python is an interpreted language, which means it's basically a program that reads a file and computes whatever in the file. So it's a separate program. Whereas a language like C is a compiled language, so it literally takes the script you make for it, it compiles it into machine code, and then it runs that machine code on the computer. So it as an executable. So basically, that compiled code is the program, whereas Python is a program that reads its own scripting files. For the most part, they look similar, but when it comes down to doing compilation stuff, it changes. And what you'll notice actually is compiled programming languages are a lot faster because they're compiled. They're not, you're reducing that middleman essentially in terms of using resources. For most things, Python is going to be what you want to use because it's going to be fast enough. You're not going to notice a difference really. But if you get into big data, we're doing some big calculations, you're going to notice decrease in performance, and you're going to see the limitation of the hardware you have. So we're going to increase the font size here so we can see this. Here we go. Okay, great. So starting off, we're just going to do the classic hello world. So print double quotes or quotes, doesn't matter, the same in Python essentially. Hello world, quote, and that's it. That's all you have to do for a Python script. Reduce that, bring it up here. If I go over here, ls lists the file in the directory. So I just did ls, which lists hello.py file because it's the only thing I have in this directory. And we do python 3 hello.py. Boom. Now it prints hello world. Okay, so this is a different setup than what you saw before. I am on my Linux partition now, but we're going to do the same thing from terminal. So just like the terminal we're in before, this terminal is still Linux terminal. So the same commands apply, the same way you navigate apply, etc. And we're going to go over C real quick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a C file. We'll do hello world. So the extension there is .c for programming language C. first you need to include the standard, how is it, sdio.h. I think it might be, here we go, yeah, that's right. So including the standard library, which standard input-output libraries, hence stdio.h. .h is a header file, so this is a file that contains some already predefined functions. So next we're going to make the main function, which is int main void with a curly brackets. We're going to printf hello world between the double quotes, and we're in that with a semicolon, and then we're going to close that curly bracket off with another curly bracket. Oops, but I forgot something actually. I have to still add a return command, a return statement. This way the program will actually execute properly. So I've written the .c file, hello world.c. Now we've got to compile it. So I'm back here, list ls to look at the file. I installed GCC, so it's GCC, but typically it's also aliased, so it means you can use a command that's different, that is just alias to a different command. So for example, cc is alias to GCC, and I'm just going to basically fill out and run this command, and this compiles the hello world.c file into the executable hello world. And then to run that, you have to do period / type out the executable, and boom, just says it right there, hello world. There's not much more to it than that. Of course, when you get more complex programs, it changes, but that's pretty much it to compile and run a C program. Those are the basics.